Greetings. Today we're going to be discussing 5 reasons why people fail in court. This is going to be part 1 of a 2-part series, just to make it shorter for those who like shorter videos. So we're going to be discussing pretty much the main reasons why they fail and what we can do to help, or what we can do to help ourselves. I have to say that I am not a lawyer, an attorney, or a part of the bar. I'm not giving legal advice. If you need legal advice, seek out an attorney. I'm just giving out information that I've found in the public domain and within my own investigations. So, number 1, consent. Many people don't understand that you lose by consent most often. That is almost like the number 1 thing that people lose by, consent. And there's 2 different types. Now this is in Black's Law Dictionary, the 4th edition, under consent. First one is express consent. It is that directly given either via voice or in writing. It is positive, direct, and unequivocal consent, requiring no inference or implication to supply its meaning. Pretty much saying, you say, or you put it in writing. They have evidence of either. Now, implied consent is that manifested by signs, actions, or facts, or by inaction or or silence, which raise a presumption that the consent has been given. Now, an example of implied consent, referencing back to my schooling as an EMT, if you came to the hospital for an issue, it is implied that you are going to be getting, that you're seeking help, or that that you're seeking information from a doctor. So that's why you get billed even if you just sit in the waiting room, because you're implying, hey, I need help and I'm accepting whatever you're giving. The express consent is when you sign those contracts that we sign, whether we put in the the handprint, or signing any papers saying, hey, all right, I'll accept whatever the doctor gives me. Number 2, fear. Fear is a really big one as well. Now, a lot of people, whether it be dealing with child protective services or child support enforcement, they will use fear tactics against you. It's everybody who I talk to know that they'll use fear tactics. They'll use what's called extortion in order to convince you to comply with what they're saying. But we know, according to 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7, that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. So, as far as the sound mind goes, in different versions, we see that it says also self-discipline or self-control. So, if you have self-discipline or self-control, it doesn't matter what's going on inside or internally or externally, you're in control. And fear can be one of those things that try to attack your mind either way it goes, inside or outside. So, whether it be someone trying to use fear tactics against you. When I was getting out of the Army, I had a lot of people saying, well, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? They're like, there's no jobs out there. This is pretty much the only job that's guaranteed you get paid. Even though there was times where we in the military didn't get paid due to something going on with the government. Like, there's even fear tactics that they would use against, like, Paul or the Messiah. They'd be like, hey, don't go to this city because they're going to kill you. And they're like, I have a message, I have a task to do, so I'm going here. And some people even use their own anecdotes or anecdotal situation to try to discourage you from going to do what you know that you need to do. Oh man, don't go over there and file that paperwork. I filed it and it didn't work for me. Well, that was you. Everybody's situation is different. Number 3, ignorance. So a lot of people don't understand that there's rules to this game. They understand it as a game, but they don't care that there's rules. They don't follow the federal rules of civil procedure, and they don't understand the difference between the legal and the lawful. So that's where their biggest issues come from. And also equity within everything they do. They don't understand equity, they don't understand equality, they don't understand legal, and they don't understand the law. As far as the game goes, a lot of people, I'm a spades player. I have been since I was a child. And a lot of people understand house rules. And that goes also with Texas Hold'em, that goes with Uno, that goes with a lot of different games. You have the rules of the game, and especially like with Monopoly, you have the rules of the game, and then you have the house rules. And whenever you get in there, you have to know what the house rules are. And that's where a lot of people fail, by their ignorance. Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6 says, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I'll also forget thy children." So, with that being said, a lot of people fail because they don't have the proper knowledge of how to go in there. They think that they can, that's why they tell you, don't go in there with this type of clothes. You have to go in there looking professional, presenting yourself. And a lot of people don't know, okay, you have to actually sign paper, you have to put paperwork in that precedes you if you go in. There's a lot of different things that you have to do so that either you don't go in or that you are at least having equity. And in a further video, we can discuss equity. Number 4. This sort of goes also with number 1, which was consent. Number 4 is silence or acquiescence. A lot of people fail because of their silence. They go in and, or they, let's say for a traffic case, they get a summons by the police officer, which is called a ticket. And it's telling them, come to court on this day. That person takes this ticket, comes to court on that day, and is like, "Nah, this ain't true. This didn't happen." They didn't file any paperwork. And what they go by, it's presumptions. Presumptions. So they end up failing at what they were trying to do, assuming that they can just handle it in court. And this is no shame or nothing against the Messiah, but through his acquiescence, we see that he died. When the Roman came to Yeshua and said, "Oh, don't you know I got the power to do this or to do that?" And he said, "You don't have any more power than what the Father has given you." If he wanted to pick up his life, he could have stopped it, but he had a job to perform. So he knew that he had to come as a sheep to the slaughter. Just let it happen. All while we have people like Paul. He stayed silent only for a purpose. Just like the Messiah, he stayed silent for a purpose. Paul, we see in Acts chapter 16, when Paul had cast out a demon out of the person, out of the woman, the people started accusing him of different things. They pretty much lied on him. And they brought him before the magistrates. In chapter 16, verse 20, it says, "And brought them to the magistrates, saying, These men being Jews do exceedingly trouble our city, and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. And the multitude rose up together against them, and the magistrate rent their clothes and commanded to beat them. And when they had laid many stripes upon them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely. We're going to skip down to verse 35, and it says, "And when it was day, the magistrates sent to the sergeants, saying, Let those men go. And the keeper of the prison told this to Paul, The magistrates have sent to let you go. Now, therefore, depart and go in peace. But Paul said unto them, They have beaten us openly, uncondemned, being Romans, and have cast us into prison. And now, do they thrust us out privily? Nay, verily, but let them come themselves to fetch us out. And the sergeants told these words unto the magistrates, and they feared, when they heard that they were Romans. And they came and besought them, like begging, and brought them out, and desired them to depart out of the city. Now you see here, Paul, he knew that he was a Roman, but he waited until into the aftermath of what they did in order to set them up. And what we don't understand is that they set us up for the okie doke when we need to set them up to fall into our plan. But we also go to Acts chapter 22, and it's the same type of situation, just not the exact thing. So in Acts chapter 22, and in verse 23 it says, And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust in the air, the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle and bade that he should be examined by scourging. In case you don't know what scourging is, they pretty much use a whip that has multiple lashes on it. Sort of like what you saw on the Passion of Christ, but in some cases it was just the leather instead of the pieces of hooked rock within it, that they might know wherefore they cried so against him. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? And when the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, Take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, Tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, Yea. And the captain answered, With a great sum obtained I for this freedom. And Paul said, But I was born free. Then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him. And the chief captain also was afraid, after he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him. On the morrow, because he would have known the certainty wherefore he was accused of the Jews, he loosed him from his bands, and commanded the chief priest and all their council to appear, and brought Paul down and set him before them. So we see here, these people, no matter what the ranking was scared, because Paul pretty much set them up. And that was part of the customs. Just like here, you have to be accused first before you get some type of action done. No police officer can just come up, beat you. They can't be the executioner. They can't be the trial and the jury and the judge. They only have one position, which is to bring you before the magistrates. And Paul was not accused of anything. They didn't bring forth the witnesses. And that's what we do. We don't do that. We sit there like Yeshua, not understanding Yeshua's purpose. We just sit there and say nothing. And lastly, on that point, number 4 of silence, to go along with what Paul, and lastly to go along someone else who didn't sit there silent and use the law in response to someone who was trying to trick him or trying to use deception against him was Moses. And we see in Exodus chapter 8 where the Pharaoh is trying to convince Moses, hey, you can go in, you don't have to leave Egypt to sacrifice to your God. You can sacrifice your sacrifices here. And Moses, living all of his life out of captivity in Egypt, knows the customs of Egypt. He knows the laws and the customs of Egypt, as well as the laws of his people. So Moses said in verse 26 of Exodus chapter 8, and Moses said, it is not meet, or it is not approved, or a good idea to do so. For we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. So that word abominations right there is referencing to idols, which are false gods or things created by the hands to worship other gods, or anything that someone can put in place to worship as a god. And so when it says, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God, no. Shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and they will stone us? So that's saying, like, say, their main god within the Egyptian culture was the calf. And that was the animal that we had to sacrifice. So, if we sacrifice that before the Egyptians, that's a holy thing to them. So, we would be at odds with them. It would create an issue. And Moses is like, no. Pretty much the law of this land says XYZ about this animal. We got to go outside to where it's not in front of them. We can't desecrate something that they would like. And that's how we don't have that type of altercation with another person. But moving on, the last one of this video is they're too talkative. They get nervous and they start yapping. Soon, and then they do that because they don't fully understand the Fifth Amendment. They just simply see it as, I have the right to remain silent, so I sit there and shut up. But no, that's idiotic, because we already see what acquiescence can get us. It's not really the right to remain silent. It's in its entirety, you have the right not to incriminate yourself. And that can be involved whether you're sitting there with a police officer, sitting there in front of a lawyer, or sitting in front of a judge. Really, within anyone, in front of anyone, any type of investigator. Because they have, I mean, for me, I'm like, they have to put in work in order to try to get me to admit something. So when that last one being too talkative, we go to 2 Kings chapter 20, where you got Hezekiah. He's been doing a great work, but it's time for him to die. He's fallen ill. And the Most High, he cries to the Most High after Isaiah says, hey man, get your stuff in order because it's time for you to die. So what he does is he turns to the wall and prays to God, and God gives him 15 more years, which should be noted if you ever want to live longer. I mean, maybe, some prayer will work. Or maybe his method in its entirety, I'll say go back and read chapter 20 of 2 Kings to find out what he did and what happened, or what type of sickness he had. But moving on, after he got healed, decided to celebrate and was too excited. So what did he do? He had visitors from Babylon. And he took those visitors, being so excited, and his friend from Babylon, the king, sent his messengers, and what he did is he took those messengers around everywhere in his house, in the kingdom of Israel. He took them to the treasury, he took them to the gardens, he took them everywhere. And what happened? Isaiah came through and was like, hey, where did you take these messengers from Babylon? King hears, I was like, hey man, I took him over here, I took him over there, man, I showed him all of this, man, I even showed him what I had on my pillows. And the Most High told Isaiah to tell him, well, everything you showed him will be carted out of here. Nothing will be left. And that's an example of us talking too much. We have to remember, we have the right not to incriminate ourselves. Whenever we sit in the car, police says, do you know how fast you're driving? You don't have to answer that. You do have to respond, or they're going to go by assumptions and presumptions and possibly cart you out of there anyway, but you do not have to answer that question. Often what a lot of people are saying is you answer a question with a question. Or you ask, is this a consensual stop? I mean, are you just stopping to talk to me, or like, what is this? But I'll go more in depth on any of these if anyone requested in a future video. Just let me know. Thanks for watching.